Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Rabbit Trail Podcast. This is episode number 173.
173.
And we are working on some like long-term break here. We're coming off and not so sure this is going to be consistent, but we've just had massive amounts of transition stuff going on the staff and in the, we've got all kinds of new database work we've been doing, and just it's been a crazy summer.
And the database stuff has been such chaos because we were switching over from one program to another program.
Use the word chaos.
And then invested a lot of time and a lot of man hours, and then went, this isn't working, and had to switch to another one. And so it has just been building workflows, building stuff, and
lots and lots of things people didn't know that ministry people did. And so it's been a busy time. We've seen just all kinds of different things going on. And so we're back for a special episode, I guess, for now. And we're going to try to get this rolling more regularly again over the next few months, probably not consistently till the new year when everything we know is will be kind of settled in, but we'll be addressing and popping in here and there throughout the next few months. But as this is episode number 173, the thing that's kind of pressed us back to the microphone is this Charlie Kirk thing, which we'll get into. But if you are interested in following us and connecting with us, like us on YouTube, hit that bell, subscribe on whatever podcast format that you like to listen to. We'll still be bringing stuff to you guys as we get moving.
And we are on Apple, Spotify, we're on YouTube, so there's plenty of places to connect with us there. But also, if we would love to get your questions, I know we have a couple of questions in the tank right now that we will address at a different time, because we really wanted to focus on this Charlie Kirk thing. But if you have any theological questions, if you have any life situation questions that you would like us to address and discuss, you can email them to rabbittrail@obcc.church, rabbittrail@obcc.church. We'll get those. We would love to see your feedback as well, and address those at a later time. And my hope too is just, as we are kind of coming back a little inconsistently, probably till the beginning of the year, because we got Thanksgiving, we got vacations, we got Christmas. But I would love, and get your idea too, just love to kick off the new year is like, okay, now we're going to be consistent again, and maybe even kick off with the live Rabbit Trail event.
We'll see what goes on. We're going to work on how to bring in some potentially guests and some different pieces like that. So we've got some adjustments we're going to be working on. We hope that you guys will enjoy that. We're jumping on because primarily, like I've been hearing, obviously I had two sides. On Sunday, we addressed just kind of briefly for 5 minutes or so, just kind of this idea of like, wow, what's going on with this Charlie Kirk stuff, praying for his family, talking about being bold with our faith, not backing off, that kind of stuff, not being chilled in free speech. And I got kind of like three different responses. Like I got some people, it was very few, but somebody was just like, you know what? Hey, why are you even talking about this kind of attitude? Like this just, why are we going political? Are we going, it's like, no, this is just a major event that needs to be addressed. And I had others who are saying like, hey, why don't we address this more? Like, why didn't we just cut the whole sermon out and just focus on this? And then I've had some people who were just happy that we said anything, excited, want to honor that and move forward. And so this is kind of like an attempt for me to kind of enter into the conversation. And I don't know about you, like, you know me pretty well at this point. Like when it comes to big events, like we're talking
tsunamis in Japan,
right? Like global event, even COVID and stuff like that. I am very, very slow to say anything, react, speak, because the nature of our culture is everything's so lightning fast. I want your immediate response. And I'll be honest, my knee-jerk reactions are never the best. I don't know about you, how you feel about your knee-jerk reactions on things like this, but I back up. I want to process. I want to see how is this going to play out? What's really going to happen? What should really be said? Because I don't know. Too often you end up putting your foot in your mouth. And as a teacher and a leader, I want to have thought through what we're going to say and what we're going to do before we speak. And what's your thoughts on kind of like the speed at which we should be having these conversations?
Well, I mean, I always feel like I usually deal with these kind of with an even keel. You know, I don't feel like I react and just, you know, blow things up, and I don't feel like I ignore them and either. And I always feel like, you know, Sunday mornings are set aside for a special reason, right? So to me, it's like I appreciate what you do on Sunday mornings. You acknowledge it, you talk about it a little bit, you know, probably give 5 minutes to it and pray over it, and then get on to what Sundays are about. Because I feel like, dude, you could hijack so many Sunday morning services, you know, with news, you know, world events, you know. So so again, I appreciate what you do, and then even like, you know, using this format where we can discuss it more intently. I'm not about interrupting Sunday services, you know, and when I say interrupting, I don't mean like not bringing it up and talking about it and praying about it, but hijacking the entire plan, you know.
Yeah, I think that a lot of just some inside baseball for some people. I don't know if they realize that we start planning for sermons and series months and months and months in advance. We're not just kind of coming up with them on the weekend or the fly. I think that's kind of obvious when you do an entire series and you got a bumper and all that kind of stuff. But this one's in particular, Justin, who is our discipleship pastor, was working with us to really set this up for well over like 7-8 months. We were starting to talk about it last year. And so for us to just go, well, we're going to just ignore our planning, what the Spirit of God has led us to and all these things for this, I just felt like, well, we need to address it, but this is probably the better format at this point. So
yeah, and I agree. And again, when it comes to, you know, reacting in the moment, you know, I mean, my hesitation always is when you react in the moment, you react with so little information, you know, and so sometimes, you know, you're pushing a narrative that isn't real, you know, because you're getting pieces and then things come out later and now you kind of look silly.
You got to walk it back, or you
gotta, you know. So to me, it's like I am the type that, you know, I can instantly, when I heard about it, and I heard about it, you know, Linda, one of the people that I serve with, she called me up and just was like in tears going, "Did you hear?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, no, I haven't heard." So like, and it really hit me. I mean, for somebody, I never met the guy. I don't really know the guy personally outside of his public persona, you know. And I didn't really watch a lot of his long form podcasts, but constantly I was watching his little shorts, you know, on Reels or whatever. Loved the guy. I thought he was brilliant. I thought he dealt with people in a way that valued their opinion, and I mean not necessarily valued the fact that he agreed with them, but dude, how many opportunities in this culture right now does somebody give the other side a platform to argue their position and why they think, you know, he's wrong? And so it was really just a debate, and then he had this platform that was huge, and giving people that have an opposite point of view the platform and opportunity to share their views. People don't do that, you know? And I mean, it's just crazy. They just want to shut down conversation and push away everybody that disagrees with them and write them off. And so I thought that was so respectful. And even when he disagreed with people, for the most part, sometimes he'd get a little snarky, but for the most part, he really treated people with dignity and respect, and more asked them questions about why they believed a certain way than really just tried to beat them up and belittle them and humiliate them, you know. And so I appreciated that part of him, and it really hit me, you know, when he passed. I mean, I didn't cry, but it was just like, wow, I really felt the loss, you know.
Yeah, in my family, I knew his name. I had heard a little bit about him. Hadn't followed him much. Knew he was a big voice up at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. My daughter had followed him and knew about him, and so did my sons a little bit. And so for me, it was more of like, oh, I'm managing something with my kids, not more than it was like I was managing something for myself. And so I've kind of learned more since. And so it was kind of an odd thing for me to feel like, oh, I need to have an opinion about somebody that I've never really listened to, didn't really know a ton about. And while I didn't necessarily disagree, as far as I can tell, with his political positions on certain things, I just like, there's so much, right? When you're somebody like Charlie Kirk, who speaks as much as he does, you're going to find something you disagree with, and you're going to find something that you can poke at. But that's what is so hard about an evaluation for me coming from the outside, is like, whoa, there is just a mountain of information this man produced. But I've learned enough that I watched him be respectful, challenging, hard, and face forward on a lot of things. So.
Now, you said that there were some issues you didn't agree with him on, but you also said you didn't really listen to him or follow him very closely. So are those for sure certain things that he is embedded in, or is it something that you kind of heard and went,
that's the problem, right? I don't know. And that's where I'm careful. I'm like, I think I may have disagreed with him on like this concept of dominionism, but then again, it's a very niche theological argument that I'm not even sure he would have held on to, or the way he would use Christian nationalist. Is that really a term I would use? Like, so again, I have to back up and just go like, I can't say a lot about, like, from what I understood from his positions on like transgender and abortion, and on things like with homosexuality being a sin, and his view of Jesus Christ. I don't think I had a lot of disagreements on the moral subjects. And that beyond what I've learned, that was the thing that for me was like, oh, what's going on here? He was a major voice for a lot of young people. And so that for me, I think, is what was weird. What hit me, though, is what I think I hit a lot of people who didn't know him, which is just, man, this is somebody was killed for practicing their free speech rights in public
and engaging in debate,
right? And that to me is the part that I felt like was super chilling. Like my job and our job when we preach and we connect with people is a free speech job. Like free speech and the right for you to hold your faith is the First Amendment. Like that is that's number one on the Bill of Rights. Like, and for it to come around where it's like, no, you don't get to speak. You're gonna die. I think that frightens a lot of public speakers on one side, and then I think, and you can tell me what you're getting from kind of from the congregational viewpoint. I think it just feels like there's this attack on our values that has now become violent in a way that is a little overwhelming. No?
I think there's been an attack on our views as Christians and stuff for quite some time. I think it's kind of amped up over the years. Just it's been more vitriolic against Christianity and even just what is the word I'm looking at? Where I can't even think right now. Where they are mischaracterizing Christians and born-again believers, into these monsters that hate and everything else. And so I do feel like that is all ramped up. As for violence against Christianity or Christians, I don't know. I feel like, you can go to China and it's all over the place,
right.
And in America, I'm not sure there is a lot of violence, shooting, killing, beatings just because you're a Christian that doesn't exist in other areas of society as well. And I do feel like the Charlie Kirk thing probably hit harder in that regard. We're like, there's this big attack on us because there was so many crazy things going on kind of at the same time. That one school got shot up. That lady got stabbed on the bus. And then Charlie Kirk, all like within just the same week, it felt like, and so I don't think the lady was killed for any reason. So it's just, I think you're just hearing all of these things and then just projecting it on that, I mean, was it a Christian school that got shot up?
It was a Catholic school.
Catholic school. And so again, I didn't really hear that much about it. I was on vacation and then it was kind of quieted down when I got back. But I don't know if that school was targeted because they were Catholic, if you heard,
they were, but it was.
But there are so many other school shootings that it's like, okay, I mean, it's not necessarily
right.
Everybody's attacking Christians right now.
I think the biggest thing also that really hit for my family was the images of his children and his wife. This idea that this is a young dad. These kids aren't going to be raised, by their dad anymore. And then the other part is just that not only this is the first time visually since JFK, as far as I understand and what I've heard out there, that people visually have seen an assassination happen on screen. Like, so that it was the fact that John F. Kennedy was shot on screen was such a huge
How about Martin
psychological.
Luther King Jr.?
I don't know if he was on screen actually.
Yeah.
I do know that publicized at the level that JFK's shooting was, and I had to tell my kids, don't watch this. You can't unsee it. And two of them had already seen it because kids shove it in your face at school, or they didn't know what they were going to look at, and that I think was massively devastating. I think there's people working through trauma because of the fact that God didn't design us to see war. He didn't design us to see these kinds of situations. And what concerned me was my sons, and this is anecdotal, obviously, but my sons, and I've heard this anecdotally from a lot of different locations now, but it still is anecdotal, and it still concerns me, but that the younger generation takes it callously. Like, it's just another video game. Oh, see that guy got, it's like it's more spectacular than it is a human being.
Right.
And I don't think anybody who would be shot in that kind of a manner, it should be watched and be made spectacular. It's tragic. It's destructive.
I do think there's a significant desensitizing that we get from video games and movies,
from the internet, just the violence that's found on the internet from kids. There's been plenty of memes over the years of kids just punching somebody in the park just to get, clicks. There's this kind of the sensationalism kind of stuff that's just, I think that's disturbing. And I think what this did is it's kind of ripped a scab off of the current reality of where we're at as a culture. And so we're kind of just like, whoa, what does this mean? It's a question of meaning at this point.
I think one of the things that shocked me about the Charlie Kirk assassination probably unsettled me more than any aspect of the assassination was seeing people celebrating it.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the thing that put me off the hardest, and people I know, posting things and reposting things if they didn't originate the post that were just like, dude, and just, all these teachers that have influence on our children, and going, that's the people that are leading our kids.
Yeah, it is evil to celebrate the death of people. In fact, the scripture says that God doesn't rejoice in the death of the wicked.
No.
If God doesn't rejoice in the death of the wicked, how dare we? That is a moral thing. And I think.
And how dare we rejoice in the death of a righteous?
Right. And so my point is just if you thought he was wicked, you still should not be rejoicing. I don't think he was wicked. And so I think this is a horrific event, but it does belie that question. Okay, as a pastor, I want to help us understand how should we respond. I could get into the theological stuff, and we typically do that, but look, God's in control. He's going to work things to the good. He's not off the throne. God allows evil because human beings are free beings. We just quickly sum up the problem of evil. We've got lots of podcasts where we've done that. But how should we respond? I think number one, going back to the book of Romans, chapter 12, it says you should not pay back evil for evil. So there is no way that you should give insult for insult, that we should be turning around feeling like we're justified to attack back in some manner. But overcome evil with good is what the scriptures indicate is our job as Christians. And I think that doesn't mean you don't stand up for your position. That doesn't mean you don't speak rightly and kindly and invite conversation into your life. I think that's what Charlie did, and I think that's appropriate. That's the scriptural vision. That's what it looks like. And look, I think some people are like, politics, that's the answer. Use power and politics to win. And it's like, whoa. Politics is downstream from the culture. What we need right now are more conversations. We need more sitting down. We need more engagement, because that's what changes minds. That's what adjusts things. Like when you meet somebody who's posting and they're posting things that are not true, like because they're taking out of context, that needs to be a conversation. Mm-hmm. And it's offline conversation. It needs to be a real human being that you're talking to, and not online. I don't think online conversations work in this medium.
Yeah, I am. For one, I'll give you kudos over me, because you're a better person than I am. But you just quoted scripture saying God doesn't rejoice in the death of a wicked. I was going to bring up a quote that I came across, and I don't remember who did it, but the quote was, "You can tell a lot about a person by how they react when someone dies." And I've read that quote, and I was just like, wow, that's heavy. I mean, and so part of me is like, people I know that are celebrating this, it's like, this is a person. This is a person. And that's the thing with our culture and our political, things going on right now is dehumanizing people so that they're not a person, so that this kind of stuff doesn't affect you emotionally. Right?
As a church, we committed ourselves to saying that nobody should not have the right to live. Right, or nobody should be kept from having the right to live. Like
from the unborn to the old,
to my enemy.
Right,
like everyone should have the right to have their life and to not be threatened like this. And I think that is critical. And so, what do you do with your justice anger? What do you do with this like just wrath that you feel? Well, I'm going to tell you have to leave it to the people God gave it to. Romans 13 says God gave his authority to the government to root out evil. Romans 13 is one of those simple passages that is so clear when he says that the rulers are not a terror for good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear for the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you'll receive his approval. And so our goal is to continue to do the good, trust the system, trust God, and knowing that, well, what if that doesn't happen? Well, God is the ultimate judge. There's a judgment day. There will be accountability. So step up, be bold, preach the gospel, which is the answer to the evil in the heart of people. We are fighting against principalities and powers. We're not fighting against flesh and blood. And so keeping it in the category of ideas, attack ideas, don't attack people. And that's what happens when you attack ideas is, you'll make people uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for me to make people uncomfortable. Granted, that's who I am. But we still have to deal with the ideas. And I would say know your ideas well then. Study them, get into them, and connect. And then the big one is like what you and I were just talking about earlier, just like don't slander. Don't slander. Psalm 101:5. Whoever slanders his neighbor secretly, I will destroy, says the Lord. That's some pretty serious stuff. God holds slander as one of the highest, most condemnable ideas. And
slander is verbal, right?
Yeah. Well, no, slander
libel is written, right?
In the biblical terminology, slander is speaking of someone negatively and about them as evil when you're lying about them.
Or misinformed.
And you're passing it on.
And that's why I think, like, pause, let the information come out, because to me, there's nothing worse than saying something that's not true and perpetuating that lie and then realizing, ooh, I was wrong about that, you know? But you can't, like somebody was talking about, a pastor gave an illustration about gossip one time, and he was talking about if you stood on a high rise on a windy day and you opened up a pillow and all the feathers flew out, that's like gossip, right? And then when you realize you're wrong, you're never going to be able to recoup all of those feathers.
That's great. Yeah, totally.
And
so, I think that here's the thing. Charlie was an extremely public figure. Like I said, there's a mountain of information. he said a lot of things. And in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 19, it says, when words are many, transgression is not lacking. You want to go find something bad that he said? I guarantee you can find it. Because
I think he even came out and apologized and addressed some of the things that he said, like, because he started this public thing when he was 18 years old, you know, and so, you know, when you're 18 versus when you're 31, there's a vast gain of knowledge.
I've got recordings of my and writings that I've done since I was 22. You don't think I have things on there that could be pulled out and thrown in my face? Absolutely. I don't want, and here's the thing. Jesus tells us that on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. So God will take care of the carelessness of our words, but we all want to apply that to Charlie or to the public speakers. No. That's for every post you make. That is for every time you say something that's not true. Every careless word you pass and speak, you write, you share, that will be judged to us. And so we as Christians must be careful what we pass on. We got to be accurate. And I get it. I think there's this thing that goes on, and I've experienced it. You've experienced it. And that is this feeling like you'll meet somebody and they'll tell, like, as a pastor, I've got a master's in divinity. I've studied the Bible for years. I've got all this stuff, right? And somebody will come up to me and critique me on my Bible knowledge and tell me, like, what I should really believe about this particular verse or something. And I'm just like, I have, like, pushed down my pride because I'm just like, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh my gosh, you're so frustrating. Like, it's like that stuff happens. I don't know if you've ever had that happen to you, but where they're just like, hey, there's Bible verse. And it's just like, what? Yeah. But look, I get it. Charlie may have said things that you know from your like expertise in your department that you're like, oh, as a Christian, you're like, that's not true. And that was wrong. And blah, blah. Okay. That doesn't make a person whitewashed evil.
Right.
That doesn't make a person whitewashed wrong on all their positions. You cannot, because they may have a position wrong here and argue for it, make them wrong in all of the others. That's actually a logical fallacy and falls akin to slander. So we want to be careful. You may have a disagreement, but don't allow your anger, which can oftentimes be fomented from arrogance. Like, why don't these people understand this? I'm the expert. Like, I know that feeling, and you have to govern it. And you cannot allow it to foment anger and become angry. Be slow to anger, slow to speak, and quick to listen. That's the James passage. And I think that in the midst of this, we have to govern our emotions, to be careful not to be vitriolic, not to just want to post whatever we want to post without researching, checking it out, making sure that what we're saying is backed up.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say, too, from a theological standpoint, when people talk about theological positions or something that I don't believe are true, number one, I think it affects me emotionally more than if it's a political view or a social view or something, and I don't agree with that. I don't think that sets me off emotionally as much as theologically, Right. But again, if somebody says something theological that they believe and they argue for, part of it too is like, is this a primary issue or is this a secondary issue? Is this something that really, in the end, it doesn't really matter if you're on this position or this position,
taxation,
as long as it doesn't, as long as it doesn't, strip away the meaning of the gospel, the cohesiveness of the gospel. So you can disagree, but don't let it affect you and then go, I don't agree with that position, so I'm going to just, erase everything else. No, there are different things that you can believe scripturally, that you can support scripturally, that people have been arguing, about for thousands of years, and we can let those less meaningful things go. But again, whether we react emotionally, and we will, and I know that, we've debated this before, but I always feel like you don't really have control over your emotions, right? In the sense that if something makes you angry, if something makes you sad, you don't necessarily have control over the initial reaction. But you have control with what you do with that, right? I mean, there's that old adage that you can't prevent a bird from landing on your head, but you can prevent him from building a nest, right? So your gut reaction, you don't really have a lot of control over that. But from that point forward, you control the narrative moving forward. And so, again, I think that whether or not you're hearing things that that upset you emotionally, whether you're hearing things that you don't believe, we should always stand for truth, and really
in self-control.
and self-control,
and respect. Yes,
and again, not repeating things that you hear that end up not being true. So have some sense to just not react right away. Be thoughtful in your reaction. Plan out your reaction a bit and get more information.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of this, and this probably won't be super popular in that statement, but whatever. People are like, Charlie Kirk was a martyr. Now, the question that I have is, personally, I want to, as a church, I like church history. I'm a pastor, theologian. The question is, what do we mean by martyr? If we mean he was a political martyr, I can grant that. It looks pretty much like the shooter was after him for his politics.
That's casing, the writings on the casings,
right.
and were more political statements than spiritual statements.
Right. And so the second side is, though, was he a Christian martyr? I think we have to hold off on that right now. It may show up that this man despised his faith and politic combined, and then I would be more inclined. Now, I don't know, so I'm on an ignorant position, so I have to feign a little bit of I'm not positive. I'm not here to say he's not. I'm not here to say he is. But this is what I'm talking about when it's like we get people who are wanted to be like, this is the big deal, he's a martyr. And it's like, okay, I'm like, you may be correct. People will probably want to argue with me about it. It's like, martyrdom in the biblical concept is that you are killed for professing your faith, meaning that, and oftentimes martyrs in China and all these places are killed because they are literally a Christian. That's the only reason they are killed.
And some of the arguments, would be, for those people that want to hold him up as a Christian martyr was, okay, you say he's a political martyr, but his political views came out of his faith, so they were intertwined. So, his political positions were based on his faith, so therefore he was killed for his faith.
And I grant that, but again, politics goes faith to politics goes one direction. It does not go backwards. It's not a two-way street. Your faith can lead to a political position, which you stand for, but it should not return and inform your faith. Your politics doesn't go backwards. In fact, you should adjust your politics as you grow in your faith. So, and the question again is the motivation of the shooter. Did he see him as a Christian, or did he see him as a political activist?
Right.
And so that's really kind of the issue. And again, I'm not saying he's not. I'm not saying he is. I'm saying that I, as a person, Charlie's world was politics. Your world may be teaching. Your world may be parenting. Your world may be in the world of the church. Right. So that doesn't mean we all need to be political in the way that he was, but it does mean that we ought to be Christian in our approach to whatever we're doing.
Right.
And we're not always going to get perfect. Let me rephrase that. We're never going to get it perfect. And so understanding that, it is important that when we seek to honor him, I just do think that you can do that as a Christian, you can honor him, but your goal is to emulate the things that Christ was like. Right.
And again, speaking the truth, not repeating things until you have verified that and really understand it. And even half truths are not truth, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I came across when it happened and people were celebrating his death, to some degree, and there was some people out there that were attacking him. And just, one of the quotes that set me off was somebody was saying, don't be a fool. Don't have empathy for the death of Charlie Kirk. Don't have empathy for him. Don't have empathy for his family, because he did not believe in empathy. He was against empathy and stood against it. So if he was against it, we shouldn't give it to him. So don't have any empathy for his family. And I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. So part of that is a half truth, right? Mm-hmm. Because there is a quote that they were saying that was, this is a quote from him that said, "I can't stand the word empathy. I think empathy is made up, and it does a lot of damage." And so that was the quote that they were running with, right? But somebody else came out and said, okay, that's part of the quote, but the second half of that quote kind of destroys that opinion, because I can't stand the word empathy. I think empathy is made up and does a lot of damage. I much prefer the word compassion and the word sympathy. Empathy is where you try to feel someone's pain and sorrow as if it were your own. Compassion allows for understanding. And so to me, that was kind of a beautiful quote, right? And somebody took part of it and then a half truth and then built a whole argument against, against him for it. And it's like, we can be guilty of that too. We hear something, somebody said something, and we start going there without really going back and looking at the context. And I mean, we preach all the time. You don't even do that with Scripture. Don't pull out a verse of Scripture of, this is God's word, and then you throw it out there, and it's like, okay, within context, that makes no sense of what you're saying.
It's really important that we don't do soundbite theology,
right,
and we don't do soundbite reactions. And so do a little research, push it in a little harder. And if this isn't your subject that you need to go researching, then this is not a subject you need to have an opinion, a solid, clear opinion about, that you should be presenting to people. And I think that's the idea. Is I think there's a lot of biblical things we can learn here that the Bible has to say. I think there are people who are better equipped to talk about Charlie than me here in Corona in Southern California, who honestly didn't know him and engaged very little with him. But I do have a congregation, guys, that we love Jesus and we want to respond rightly. And that means rightly with the truth, rightly with compassion, rightly that we would be praying for the poor family of the shooter, for the poor family, for Charlie. I mean, we are a people who will not celebrate the destruction of a life. That's what the devil and the enemy would like. Our job is to seek God's will, to see his kingdom rule in this place. And so that's really just kind of the simple conclusion. And we don't need to go much further than that. We just wanted to kind of set down some address and what we're kind of seeing as some commentary and help for us on how we respond and how we react. I hope this has been helpful for you. There's a lot of scripture here. There's a lot of things to look at, and we really want to encourage you. So if you have any further questions that maybe are theological or other things you'd like to share with us, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know at rabbittrail@obcc.church. That's rabbittrail@obcc.church. And hey, next time we get behind these mics, we will see you then. But otherwise, God bless you guys.
Boom shakalaka.